to discuss tonight with our panel. Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration, and Abel Maldonado, former Republican Lieutenant Governor of California.
Now, we will bring you that story in a moment, but first, just want to bring you some live pictures from here in Washington, D.C., from the White House. President Trump is due to make an announcement about his plan for what he calls the Golden Dome air and missile defense system. You can see there the White House pool of reporters and camera people just gathered outside in the colonnade there outside the Oval Office. Those doors on the right of the screen you're seeing there is the entrance that the pool will go into that announcement that President Trump will make in just a moment. He's going to be joined by the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. They'll speak to those reporters who are gathered there. Now, the Golden Dome missile defense shield was first ordered by President Trump in January. You can just see there, here you go, live action on the context here. The press pool are on their way in, so the pool photographer has obviously tilted their lens up to the ceiling. You can just see them there going into the Oval Office. You can see the portrait of Abraham Lincoln there behind the president's desk, where he is most likely going to be speaking from, alongside the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. The familiar watchers of the Oval Office will see there that President Trump has added a huge number of portraits to the walls of the Oval Office since he came into office. You can see there the pool camera person just getting their shot lined up. Viewers are getting an excellent behind-the-scenes insight into what we all face when we are on pool duty at the White House. The president there just waiting for everyone to get into position. It looks like he is about to start speaking. Let's listen in.
The Oval Office, one of the great places of the world, as we make a historic announcement about the Golden Dome missile defense shield. That's something we want, and Ronald Reagan wanted it many years ago, but they didn't have the technology. But it's something we're going to have. We're going to have it at the highest level. I want to thank Secretary Hegseth, who's been fantastic, and Secretary Rubio, and Space Force Vice Chief of Space Operations, General Mike Gutlein. I also want to recognize Senators Dan Sullivan, Kevin Cramer, and Jim Banks, fantastic senators, great talents, great political talents, and people that love our country. In the campaign, I promised the American people that I would build a cutting-edge missile defense shield to protect our homeland from the threat of foreign missile attack. And that's what we're doing. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we have officially selected an architecture for this state-of-the-art system that will deploy next-generation technologies across the land, sea, and space, including space-based sensors and interceptors. And Canada has called us, and they want to be a part of it. So we'll be talking to them. They want to have protection also. So, as usual, we help Canada do the best we can. This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years. Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. As you know, we helped Israel with theirs, and it was very successful, and now we have technology that's even far advanced from that, but including hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles, and advanced cruise missiles. All of them will be knocked out of the air. We will truly be completing the job that President Reagan started 40 years ago, forever ending the missile threat to the American homeland, and the success rate is very close to 100%, which is incredible when you think of it. You're shooting bullets out of the air. I'm also pleased to report that the One Big Beautiful Bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this when it's completed. This afternoon, I'm also announcing that I will appoint, very importantly, General Gutlein to lead the ambitious new effort as the direct reporting program manager for the Golden Dome, very talented man, and I'm very honored to have been the one that helped or really created Space Force. Space Force has turned out to be a tremendous success. We were third in space, and now we're #1 in space by a lot. It's not even close. And Mike is a 4-star Space Force general, the recipient of the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, one of the most respected people in the world having to do with defense. You know, we have offense and we have defense. I'll bet he's good at offense, too. And he has an unmatched background in missile warning technology and defense procurement. General Goodline also knows that we need to move fast. No one is more qualified for his job, and everybody, this was a universal acceptance of General Goodline. Everybody that knows him and knows everybody else, they said there's only one man for the job, so I have a feeling we have the right guy. But now I'd like to invite Secretary Hegseth and the General to please say a few words and describe the system a little bit. And we appreciate you being here. The press has really been very fair over the last period of a couple of months. I don't know what happened to you. It was so much more exciting the other way. But you've been very, very fair. We have very high poll numbers, the highest we've ever had. And I think we're doing a great job. We had a tremendous trip to the Middle East, as you know. It was a really amazing trip. And now I came home, and this is the one I was really looking forward to this day, because this is very important for the success and even survival of our country. It's a pretty evil world out there, so this is something that goes a long way toward the survival of this great country. And as I said, we'll be discussing Canada. They want to hook in, and they want to see if they can be a part of it. That sort of makes sense. I guess that's what I was talking about from day one. You know, it just automatically makes sense, and it won't be very difficult to do, but they'll pay their fair share. Thank you very much, everybody. And Pete, go ahead.
Sure. Well, Mr. President, add this to the long and growing list of promises made and promises kept. Ultimately, this right here, the Golden Dome for America, is a game changer. It's a generational investment in the security of America and Americans. Mr. President, you said we're going to secure our southern border and get 100% operational control after the previous administration allowed an invasion of people into our country. President Reagan 40 years ago cast the vision for it. The technology wasn't there. Now it is, and you're following through to say we will protect the homeland from cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, drones, whether they're conventional or nuclear. It's not lost on me, sir, also that you had the vision to start the Space Force, and here we are when the others said we didn't need it. Here we are in the Oval Office with one of the leaders of the Space Force in General Goodline leading the charge on putting in place a game-changing Golden Dome for America. So, sir, it's an honor to be a part of this bold initiative. We're going to get to work on it. And we have been since you signed that executive order on January 27th. We've been fast forward on this. We're here on this day, and this is just one stop in delivering this defense of the homeland, which is something you've charged us with doing, and we'll keep going until it is complete, sir.
Thank you, Pete. Pete's doing a great job, by the way. Thank you very much. General, please.
Mr. President, today is a great day for the nation as we double down on protection of the homeland. As you're aware, our adversaries have become very capable and very intent on holding the homeland at risk. While we have been focused on keeping the peace overseas, our adversaries have been quickly modernizing their nuclear forces, building out ballistic missiles capable of hosting multiple warheads, building out hypersonic missiles capable of attacking the United States within an hour and traveling at 6,000 miles an hour, building cruise missiles that can navigate around our radar and our defenses, and building submarines that can sneak up on our shores, and worse yet, building space weapons. It is time that we change that equation and start doubling down on the protection of the homeland. Golden Dome is a bold and aggressive approach to hurry up and protect the homeland from our adversaries. We owe it to our children and our children's children to protect them and to afford them a quality of life that we have all grown up enjoying. Golden Dome will afford that. I greatly appreciate your trust in me and your nomination in me and your trust.
Questions?
Mr. President, you had mentioned at the beginning of your remarks that this was a campaign promise of yours. Have military commanders asked for this system specifically? Because NORAD had said previously that the current system was adequate. So what does this get the United States
Somebody
that
said the
isn't
current
already
system is
in
adequate.
before?
There really is no current system. We have certain areas of missiles and certain missile defense, but there's no system. We just have some very capable weapons that hopefully we never have to use, but we have some very capable weapons. Now, this is a different league. There's never been anything like this. This is something that's going to be very protective. I think you can rest assured there'll be nothing like this. Nobody else is capable of building it either.
Was it something that military commanders asked you for? Did they ask you to do this?
Well, let me put it differently. I suggested it, and they all said, "We love the idea, sir." It's the way it's got to be, right? But they want it, and they wanted it badly once it was suggested. I don't know if they ever thought they would be lucky enough to have it, but we were able to get it done, and we have all the funding, so pretty much tucked away. I think most people feel it's very important to have. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. When you first announced this idea, critics said it would be prohibitively expensive, potentially ineffective, and could trigger an arms race in space. What do you say to those critics about that?
Well, they're wrong. It's about as close to perfect as you can have in terms of real production. I told you Canada wants to be a part of it, which be, fairly small expansion, but we'll work with them on pricing. We'll be dealing with them on pricing. They know about it very much. They've asked to be a part of it, actually. They've asked us to be a part of it. I think it's something that is great. If you can afford to do it, we can afford to do it. We took in $5.1 trillion in the last 4 days in the Middle East. And when you think about it, this is a tiny fraction of that. But we make it all here. We're going to make it all here. We have when I will tell you, an adversary told me, a very big adversary told me, the most brilliant people in the world are Silicon Valley. He said, we cannot duplicate him. We can't. This was somebody that I won't tell you who it is, but you'd be amazed. We have the most brilliant minds in the world doing this kind of thing, the equipment, the space, the computers, everything. But I said that we just can't duplicate what you have there in Silicon Valley. We never have been able to. And this is a very strong group of people and very strong minds, but they can't. So we have things that nobody else can have. You see what we've done helping Israel with that. You probably wouldn't have in Israel. They launched probably 500 missiles altogether, and I think 1/2 of a missile got through, and that was only falling to the ground as scrap metal. It's pretty amazing, and this is in terms of technology, far advanced from that system.
And just one follow-up on the adversaries. Have you addressed Russia's...
You're listening to President Trump in the Oval Office there. He's been joined by his Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, as they announce the Golden Dome, a technology that President Trump had promised right after coming into office. He called it cutting-edge missile defense. He said it's officially selected architecture that will deploy across land, sea, and space. And he said the success rate of this defense technology is close to 100%. We also heard him here that the One Big Beautiful Bill, he's talking about his tax and budget bill that's working its way through Congress, will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome. Let's talk a bit about this as we're looking at these images with the Security Brief's Mikey Kay. He's a former senior officer and assault helicopter pilot in the British military. Mikey, first of all, can you just explain what the Golden Dome is, how it would work?
So I think, Sumi, we should really start, I think, with what the threat is. And I think that can be defined in two areas. The buzzword that we've heard throughout of this brief is hypersonic missiles. A hypersonic missile is defined as a missile that can travel beyond Mach 5, so 5 times the speed of sound. And some of the hypersonic missiles that we're seeing these days can get up to Mach 10, so 10 times the speed of sound. So that's an important part. Now, when you start diving into the technology of hypersonic missiles, you have what's called a HGV, which is a hypersonic glide vehicle. What that means is that a missile traveling at that speed has the ability to be able to turn in flight, which makes it harder to intercept. So they're two key, really important points. The second bit is the range of whatever the threat is. And that at the moment is defined by ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, which have a range of beyond 5,600 kilometers. And then you've got an IRBM, which is an intermediate range ballistic missile, which has a range of between 3,000 and 5,000. Now, when you look at the distance between, say, St. Petersburg and New York City, that's 7,000 kilometers. So that fits in the ICBM range, the intercontinental ballistic missile range. Now, I really want to pick up on what Trump said here in terms of no one else has this technology. Now, What I don't know what he's referring to here specifically, when it comes to hypersonic missiles, Russia has hypersonic missiles. It's got the Orenshik. I don't know if you cast your mind back to last November. The Orenshik missile was launched on Dnipro, also had 6 multiple warheads that could be deployed. But that's an intermediate range, so that doesn't, as we sit here, that doesn't have the ability. It has the ability to target Europe, but doesn't have the ability to target the US, right? Okay. If you look at Russia have got the DF-17. That is a hypersonic missile. That also is an intermediate range missile. So that's below 5,000 kilometers. That doesn't have the ability to hit the US. If you look at Iran are claiming they've got a Fatah-1 and Fatah-2 hypersonic missile. Those claims have been rebuffed slightly. So for me, the big area of this Golden Dome is the interceptor bit. And I think that's going to be the hard bit, is actually building a technology through Golden Dome that actually intercepts anything that is hypersonic, Mach 5 to 10, or has the intercontinental ballistic missile range. Okay,
really interesting to get a perspective there on the threat and the technology. Mikey, thank you so much for giving us that perspective there as we see these pictures of President Trump still there at the White House.
Okay, we've plenty more still to come. We'll be hearing our panel's thoughts on that and everything else that's happened today. Do stay with us. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC. You're watching The Context on BBC News. Well, let's bring our panel in here. Joel Rubin and Abel Maldonado, patiently waiting there while we listen to that announcement from President Trump. Just want to pick up on some of what he said. Abel, if I can start with you first. The president said when he was asked whether the US military had asked for this Golden Dome, he said, well, I suggested it and they said, we love the idea, sir. Do you think, Abel, is there a need for this Golden Dome? It's a huge amount of money.
Well, obviously, as we heard the gentleman speak right before about these hypersonic missiles that are out there at this time that are capable of going into range, which gets them close to the U.S. This is a promise made. This is a promise kept by President Donald J. Trump. So, yes, he's campaigned on it. He talked about it during his 2016 campaign when he was president. He was president number 45. So this is something that's very important. Obviously, America first. He talks about that all the time. But this is about protecting the homeland. This is doubling down. Promise made, promise kept. And I need to tell you that we are protected at this time. It's not that we're vulnerable. This is going to make us more protected, safer in America. And I'm glad it's moving forward. The big, beautiful bill, as you heard, has $25 billion in it. They're talking about anywhere from $150 to $200 billion to complete this project. And he wants to get it done now. So we're looking forward to that.
Joel, do you agree that this is an investment in American security for the future?
Well, with all due respect to my friend Abel, it's a ridiculous idea, and the president, like most things, doesn't know what he's talking about. The Congressional Budget Office is already projecting that this could cost upwards of $600 billion over the next 2 decades. We, as a country, have spent over $250 billion since the 1980s on missile defense. The whole idea that we can somehow create this sealed bubble over the United States is just ridiculous. And frankly, we have to look in costs and benefits. $1 trillion deficits on an annual basis right now is what we're staring at. And now the president, rather than dealing with the threats in front of us, wants to come up with a massive expenditure to counter threats that may or may not arise that could be dealt with through multiple other ways, diplomacy and deterrence in particular. It's just a colossal waste of money.
And Abel, just on that point, could the money be better spent, even if it's on defences within the US military? You hear people say about the need there is to have better equipment, more people, that sort of thing.
We're going to have resources for better equipment. We're going to have resources for the troops. This is an extra. This is another project that's very much needed. And with all due respect to my friend Joel, when he talks about it's a massive expense, for the last 4 years, the Biden administration just spent to no end. 11 million immigrants came to America, funding health care, funding everything for them. This is This is national security. This is to protect the homeland, to protect the USA, and I'm excited about it, and so is the American people, to be very sincere.
Okay, a lot of respect going around on this panel. We have plenty more to discuss with both of you, Joel and Abel, so do stay with us. Back here on The Context in just a few moments. We have much more of the day's news to discuss with you, so stay with BBC News. America's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, was on Capitol Hill today.
He faced tough questions on the Trump administration's foreign policy, from the removal of sanctions on Syria to the slow path to peace in Ukraine, to warnings of that growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza and increased pressure on the U.S. to step up and act.
After an 11-week blockade, Israel this week started allowing what it calls a basic amount of aid into Gaza. We have some pictures filmed by the BBC that show a convoy of aid trucks crossing the border. There are those pictures there. But Israel also announced it would be expanding its military operation in the territory. And it's this action that has prompted growing condemnation from leaders across the globe. Earlier today, the UK paused trade negotiations over the expansion of those military operations in Gaza. And in the last few hours, the European Union approved a proposal by the Netherlands to review its ties with Israel because of its actions.
In Washington, D.C. today, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was pressed on the next steps of that U.S. response. Here's a little of that exchange on Capitol Hill.
We're seeing real starvation right now, and I think we owe it to our connection and our close relationship to Israel to powerfully convey the importance of not just 5 trucks a day like yesterday or 100 trucks a day, but enough food to end the starvation. Is that a policy you can get behind?
To ultimately rebuild and provide people a future in Gaza?
To get behind enough trucks to end the starvation.
Yeah, we've made that point. Look, I think ultimately, I don't think you would have seen the events of the last couple of days without our engagement, the engagement of others. Israel remains a strong ally. We're supportive. We understand why, for their security, Hamas cannot exist. We are also very happy to see that they have allowed aid to begin to flow, and we hope that that will continue.
Let's bring in our panel, Joel Rubin, Abel Maldonado. Joel, I want to start with you. There does, as underlined by Marco Rubio's testimony today, seem to be a change in tone from the Trump administration on the truly dramatic humanitarian situation in Gaza right now. What do you make of this?
Yeah, Katrina, it's clear that Secretary Rubio is very uncomfortable talking about this in public because there really is no policy towards Israel, Gaza, and this war between Israel and Hamas. And so they're kind of making it up as they go along, and maybe a little bit of gentle pressure now on the Prime Minister Netanyahu to allow for food to get into Gaza. Now, remember, look, Hamas started this war, but Israel, if it is going to do what it is planning to do in occupying Gaza, it is responsible for the safety and the well-being of the Palestinian people there. And the United States, we have a president who pitched an idea that was a fantasy a couple of months ago called this Gaza on the Riviera, similar to the Golden Dome fantasy, and it really messed up all of our diplomacy and our vision. He went out to the Gulf and really didn't engage on this issue. And so it's sort of an ad hoc dynamic, and Secretary Rubio, that's what he had to deal with. And I have to say, he did a very strong job. He clearly knows what he's doing in those venues, like at the committee today. But this is not a policy that he really has much to sell, because there's not much to it.
Abel, as we've seen the UK, and the EU ramping up pressure on Israel over the humanitarian disaster in Gaza, should the U.S. be doing the same?
I think the U.S. is doing something about it, and I think President Trump is having conversations. Obviously, we haven't heard it directly from him, but I got a gut feeling that he's making some pressure moves to end this. As Tom stated earlier, President Trump's made it very clear. He's used the word starvation many times. President Trump does not like war. He does not like the killings that are going on, like he doesn't in Ukraine, he doesn't here in Gaza as well. So I think there's pressure on the move. I think Secretary Rubio today was very forthright. I think he was upfront about the situation. I'm glad that there is aid coming in. Is it enough? No. Is it quick enough? Obviously, no. But let's not forget who started this war. Hamas is still there. Israel's not going to stop until they're eliminated. They've made that very clear. And I hope that they end that as quick as they can. And I know that President Trump is exactly what he wants. He wants a ceasefire. He wants negotiations. He wants that to end. He wants the bloodshed to end now.
Joel, if you were saying that what President Trump is doing and his team isn't working, doesn't amount to much, what can the US do? What should it be doing? Should it be withholding aid? Should it be thinking of sanctions? How does it move the situation along?
Yeah, there's some very concrete things it should be doing. First and foremost, it should not be putting out fantasy ideas like it did with this plan on Gaza and Riviera a couple of months ago, which was at the precise moment that further ceasefire negotiations were to have commenced. And President Trump, he needs to actually get with our allies to talk about a way forward, and that includes with Israel for a day-after plan in Gaza that's realistic, that provides a political horizon, that will ultimately get rid of Hamas.
But Joel, what can the president do in this?
Yes.
Sorry for interrupting you, but just
yeah.
What can the president do in this exact moment when we are seeing nearly 2 million people starving to death?
What he should be doing is, of course, calling on Israel to get humanitarian aid into Gaza, and he needs to do more to ensure these negotiations, pressuring our allies who sit on Hamas to get them to release the hostages, which is the final key step inside of Israel to ensuring that the war does come to a ceasefire. And he needs to be engaging and calling on leaders to summits, to direct negotiations and discussions. He was in the Gulf meeting on the side, not talking about this, and I just feel like it was a wasted opportunity. He did not go to Israel. He did not make the appeal to the Israeli people or the Israeli government about the importance of getting to peace. He flew right past Israel. So he's not putting in the political capital he needs to see this resolved.
All right, Joel and Abel, stay there. Of course, we'll have much more with you. Just before we take a break, we have seen, as we've been talking about, Secretary of State Rubio's testimony on Capitol Hill today. We've seen this line coming across that he expects Russia to present Ukraine ceasefire terms within days. Remember, we just saw that phone call between Presidents Trump and Putin, where it didn't appear any concrete steps forward towards a ceasefire were taken. But now the Secretary of State saying he's hoping to see or expecting to see Russia present that terms within days. So we'll continue to follow that as well. But of course, we'll take a break first. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC.
You're watching The Context on BBC News. Well, extreme weather has plagued several states in the US, with forecasters warning more tornadoes and storms are expected this week. Kentucky has been hit the hardest so far, as a devastating tornado late on Friday damaged hundreds of homes and whisked away several vehicles, killing at least 19 people.
With the cleanup process currently underway, state and local officials are looking to the federal government for help. Here's the governor of Kentucky.
I've now been governor for at least 14 federally declared disasters, 13 of them weather, and this is one of the worst. It's one of the worst in terms of the loss of human life. It's one of the worst in terms of damage, and it's tough. Let me say that politics has no place in responding to natural disasters like this one. And for the two events that we've already had this year, we've seen a White House and a FEMA organization that has performed well and has done what we've asked.
Now, the politics that Governor Beshear was referring to are the layoffs and cuts to these agencies that President Trump and the Trump administration have put in place since taking office at the end of January. And to talk some more about those, I'm joined here by Tom Fahey. He's Legislative Director for the union that represents National Weather Service employees. Tom, thanks for coming in to talk to us. How critical is the situation as you see it in terms of this awful weather that we're seeing and how many people you have in the critical roles that are needed?
The National Weather Service right now is working on a new work model, for example, to keep communities safe across the country. Right now, considering the full staffing requirements of a weather forecast office, for example, Jackson, Kentucky, if we had a full staff, we'd be at 22 individuals. Right now, we're not at that number. We're more like 13 individuals in the office right now.
What impact does that have then in trying to deal with something like a tornado approaching?
Well, it's the fact that you need to have, when you have an all-hands-on-deck situation, is very much like being in a battle stations in a wartime situation where different people have different jobs as far as repelling the enemy. The same thing in this particular example. We have people who have to man the boards, activate the alerts, answer all the phones, be in touch with the public safety officers, emergency managers. So there's a great deal involved when you have an emergency situation with active live tornadoes on the ground.
So from a safety perspective, does that mean that it would cause difficulties in terms of knowing what's approaching, being able to tell people who might be in harm's way to gather themselves and go?
Well, it's actually a little different because, in this particular example we have with Kentucky, we had advanced notice because of the weather models indicated that we would have a large supercell laying over the top of the Ohio River Valley. So we had days' notice in this particular case for this example. It was just a matter of putting the right people in the office. So on Friday afternoon, the leadership of the National Weather Service made the determination that the current people who were in the office were told, okay, you guys are going to have to work overtime tonight and pull an extra shift. And everybody just does it voluntarily. They're happy to do it because it's commitment to public safety, but also the mission of the National Weather Service is the protection of life and property.
So how do you link that to what we've seen the Trump administration do since they came into office?
Well, the Trump administration, when they came into office, they were trying to do an overhaul of what their advisors considered was overspending by the previous Biden administration. So what they did was they tried to realign what they thought was the proper numbers to do. But unfortunately, we have far too many shortages in critical places across the country, getting hit with 600 people, almost 600 people who left the administration. 100 were the probationary employees who were fired. Another 500 individuals, those were the people who took the various early retirement buyouts that were offered by the administration. And then contrast that to 15 years earlier, between 2010 and 2025, 600 individuals retired from the National Weather Service over a 15-year period. So getting hit with 600 people leaving in 90 days, it's staggering to the entire staffing requirements of the service.
Huge reduction, all right. Okay, Tom Fahey, thank you so much for coming in to tell us about that issue.
You're very kind, and thank you for the invitation.
Let's bring in Joel and Abel for just quick final thoughts on this. Abel, real concerns about more than 600 National Weather Service staff since January now out of work. Do you think this is a danger?
Well, some of them were voluntary. They decided to move on.
Yeah.
And obviously the other ones were due to cuts because of the overspending of the previous administration. But let's hear what Governor Beshear of Kentucky said. He said the Trump administration and FEMA have been great on this issue. So we need... I can share this with you. When it comes to a national disaster, President Donald J. Trump is on it. We saw what happened with the floods in North Carolina. He showed up immediately. I'm not concerned about this.
Okay.
As we move forward with the budget, I think we'll have some realignments where he's going to make sure there's protection, and I can guarantee you the assistance for Governor Beshear and the people of Kentucky will be there.
Joel, what's your thought?
Real quick point, this again shows why public service matters, why we need a government that functions, and why attacking our civil servants who protect us is so beneath the concept of public service. And to the specifics, 3/4 of the staff at NOAA that predict weather events like this have been fired by DOJ, so we're going to see a lot more problems in the future. It's not just that we have to recover, it's that we have to be able to tell people in advance to get out of the way. Apparently that's unnecessary work according to Elon Musk, but it's not to the American people.
And Abel, just very briefly, we've heard about the president say they might reverse cuts that weren't made correctly. Do you think this might be one of those cases?
I think there'll be some adjustments, and when there's mistakes made, they'll fix them. Obviously, President Donald Trump is a person who moves quickly on everything. But the main point here is, I heard what Governor Beshear of Kentucky said, a Democrat. The Trump administration and FEMA have done a good job for us. So on this notion of just letting people know in the future, that will be fixed if there is an issue. If not, we're going to continue to move forward.
Okay, and I suppose it is the workers that are saying there is an issue here more broadly than just that situation we saw in Kentucky. But we're out of time for today. I want to say a very big thank you to Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration, and Abel Maldonado, former Republican Lieutenant Governor of California. Thanks as always for being with us.
And thank you for watching The Context.